So millennials, you have to understand that for them, money isn't everything. Meaningful money is something that they are looking for, right? Why I say that is because baby boomers will tolerate a toxic workplace just to get the money. Millennials won't. That's why we are seeing the great resignation happening today, because they are realizing there are better opportunities elsewhere. I don't need to suffer a toxic environment, and they want to do something that's more meaningful to them, right? So that's why all the side hustles come about. That's where all the entrepreneurial gig economy and all of these things are popping up, because they see that opportunity, it doesn't always have to be here. So fulfillment is first.
Millennials, you hate them or you love them, but they are going to be 75% of the workforce by 2025. Today, I will be talking with Vivek Iyyani, and he's going to give us a lot of tips on how to engage with millennials. So I think you're going to love this conversation. But before that, don't forget to subscribe so that you can join the conversation. Vivek, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rodrigo.
It's a pleasure. Okay, so you are a specialist on millennials. Mm-hmm. What led you to this point?
Okay, that's a very interesting story. So I started out my career in schools. So I went to schools, did leadership programs, study skills programs, camps. I did it for quite a number of years. And then I realized, okay, this group that I'm interacting with, when I'm already talking to them back in, I think, early 2000s, they were saying that, you know, when they grow up, they don't want to be the typical engineer, doctors and lawyers. I want to be YouTubers, influencers. That was the lingo. Right? And that led me to realize that, interesting, because these students are in university and still they are thinking of the different aspects. And these are not your typical jobs. So I realized there's a certain shift that's happening, and I started to interview my friends who are already employed. I started to look into people who are already looking to shift their career once they've actually joined employment. And I realized that, you know, this group is a little different, and I basically thought, okay, I want to know what's the issue. And upon further investigation and interviews, I realized that they are going through what we call a quarter-life crisis, where they've done everything that their parents told them to do. They've joined that company, right? The good school, good grades, right? Good job, good pay, and then they're still dissatisfied with what they have. And that made me realize, okay, this is something that we need to address, and we need to know how to tackle this issue. And those interviews then led to the book, and then the book led me to realize, okay, this is the space I want to be in. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go there and understand better the millennials. But first, let's have an overview about the generations. Can you take us through what are the different generations, and also some of the definitions? How can you describe each one of them?
Okay, so I'll go with the years, right? Because everyone refers to the years first. So baby boomers are the 1946 to 1964. We have the Gen X, that's 1965 to 1979. We have the millennials, who have the 1980 to about 1995. And we have the Gen Zs as a 1996 to about 2010, 2011. Right? So these are the four main generations still in the workplace. Baby boomers are exiting, Gen Zs are entering right now. And if you're looking at certain definitions, you would see it in the workplace. The baby boomers are called the job clingers, because back then they will cling on to jobs and they'll never leave. It's a one job for life. That's a very traditional trait that they are used to having. We see the Gen Xers. They are the ones who are known as the latchkey kids, because you know, it's a point in their time where both parents started working, so they'll come home, they'll watch TV alone, and they'll be very independent. Millennials are the job hoppers, right? And Gen Zs, I'm still waiting to see what exactly is the new term, but I think we are going to see them as the tech, digital savvy, very different in terms of very unique characteristics as well. Yeah.
Okay, so many different generations, and today they are all working together at the workplace.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges that you've seen today happening at the workplace between these generations?
Well, I think the first thing that we notice is that the older generation don't like the younger generation, and they say that they are entitled, they are demanding, they are, easily offended, and they see these traits that like they want to get instant gratification in terms of they want to just quickly promote. They just want all the good things, but they don't want to put in the work for the things that they want, right? So there is this disconnect, right? And there's this power struggle that we see between the older and the younger generations. And that's the key problem that leading to a lot of conflicts at work.
Oh, can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So let's say, for example, you are in a team, right? And you dress up with a t-shirt and jeans, and that's what you're comfortable in. And it's okay, right? But your team leader feels that you should be dressing for the job you want, not the job you have, because that's the concept that they've been raised on, or that's what they've believed in when they entered the workforce. So your appearance is so important, and and the millennials thinking, but the way I dress doesn't affect the way I write an email. So why is it so important if I'm not client facing, right? So these are the kind of things that we see are. It's just work ethics, different preferences. I have different preferences from you, but we can still both get the work done. But the thing is, if we have this conflict and we don't see eye to eye, we don't work well together. We just keep fighting with each other within the team. And I think that's the problem, because it affects productivity, it affects retention and engagement as well in the workplace.
Okay, so now let's enter more deeper into millennials.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can you please tell us 3 words to describe a millennial?
Well, definitely everyone who thinks of millennial, they will think of they are young, right? They'll think of them as digital natives, and they'll think of them as people who love to job hop. I think these are some of the common traits that we do notice with the young generation, and it may be a stereotype, but that's what immediately comes to mind when people think of that. Yeah.
And tell us, what is something that you discovered that not many people know about millennials?
Yes, so very interestingly, right, there is a micro generation that has been formed by researchers. They are called the Xennials, Xennials. They are from 1979 to 1984, because they are the ones who grew up with analog, right? And then they saw the transformation into digital. So they are the Xennials. They kind of relate to the Gen X, and they also relate to the millennials. So they're like a bit undecided, and they are very different. There are other terms for them. They're called the geriatric millennials as well, right? There are different terms as well, but this is one of the ways that I think researchers have realized that there's this small 5-year generation that actually is very different from the other millennials. So we call them the wave 1, and then we have the wave 2 millennials. Wave 1 didn't grow up with technology immediately with them. Wave 2 started to see technology in their lives while they were, I think, in primary school and stuff. The computers started coming in, the mobile phones, the smartphones, all of these things started coming in. But I think the geriatric millennials, they kind of had an analog childhood for a long time. Yeah.
So if we look at the workplace, what is the percentage of millennials today, and what do you think is going to be in 10 years?
Okay, so as of 2020, we believe that the global workforce will have 50% millennials, okay? And as of 2025, it'll be 75% millennials, okay? So that's the statistics that we know offhand, that the millennials are a huge generation because they are the children of the baby boomers, very big in size. In fact, worldwide, we have about 2.3 billion millennials, and in Asia alone, we have about 1.1 billion. So it's a high concentration of millennials just in Asia. So yeah, these are some of the statistics that we know as of now.
Okay, so companies really need to understand millennials if they want to succeed. So maybe you can tell us, like, you did a lot of research for your books. What was something that surprised you while you were doing your research?
Okay, so what surprised me was that there was so much of information that was already there about how new companies are coming up and providing different kinds of interesting ways to engage their team members. And yet, despite these new companies popping up and having these new initiatives, there were a lot of companies that were a lot more comfortable to stay where they were at, right? Because recruitment is a all-rounded competition. I can recruit you from anywhere and you will still be a competitor, right? Because it is not about, I can only recruit you from this industry or this company. I can recruit people from anywhere. And yet, a lot of organizations, despite knowing this fact, and despite knowing that there is new companies in our space that are doing a lot more things to engage with their team, they have a different type of work culture, right? They still didn't move fast enough to really kind of capitalize on the millennials coming into their workforce and making the most out of it. So it was quite surprising to see that, because I would think that if you are a pretty well-to-do organization, pretty known organization and brand, you would be on the heels of getting all these new changes implemented, but that was not the case, and that was surprising.
Oh, so and whatever you've seen in the with the your customers, what are some of the challenges that they are facing today regarding the millennials?
Okay, so I think, like I said earlier on, one of the things is that they can't seem to connect. I can't seem to understand where you're coming from. I can't seem to get along with you. So, for example, one of the leaders was saying that I have a lot of millennials in my team, right? I try to do a lot of things for them, and one of the things is I invited them to go to lunch, right? To celebrate. We've finished a lot of work together. And they would come to me and say, can we go to this restaurant instead of this one? Because, that one is better and this one. So they tend to feel offended, I'm doing this out of my, initiative, and then now you're trying to tell me this is not good enough. I can do better. So that seems to be a very different behavior, because last time I don't think the younger counterparts would actually go up to their seniors and say, maybe you can do this better by doing that. Right, giving suggestions, right? And I think in Chinese there is this saying that you need to have if I've eaten more salt than you have white hair, something along those lines, because you need to really collect a lot more white hair before you can talk to me in the same level or give me suggestions like this. So what we are noticing is that what they experienced, the leaders experienced as young counterparts when they join the workforce is very different from how millennials are interacting with their seniors and their leaders. They are a lot more vocal, right? They tend to voice out what exactly they want, and it tends to be a shock for a lot of people, because that's not common. That never used to be the common practice. And another interesting thing is that when we did a lot of interviews, we interviewed managers who were really popular amongst millennials and managers who were not so popular amongst millennials. And what we found out is that both managers felt that millennials are demanding, entitled, and kind of easily offended, weak. So then the question became, so if both managers, the good and the bad, see that millennials are like this, then maybe it is the leader that needs to change the way they are managing instead of expecting the millennials to change. And that was also a very interesting insight.
Oh, that's very. And why there was a difference? Why they like more one manager than the other, the millennial?
Yes. So the managers. So we looked into that, and we looked into what was it that these managers were doing that the other managers didn't do. So one thing that the popular managers started to do is to realize that these people want their voice to be heard. Right? They really want to be heard. So it's important to have two-way dialogues instead of me just listening, thinking about it, and then maybe forgetting about it. They really gave them the voice, gave them the opportunity, and gave them the skills that they needed, and they took on a very mentoring approach when it came to engaging with them. Whereas we looked at the other managers who were not so popular, and they had more of, no, you do as what I tell you to do. They play rank a lot more. They had this I'm more senior to you, you respect me, right? You do what I tell you to do. You don't have experience, you know nothing. So they had a bit of a authoritative approach towards it, and millennials just disconnected with them, right? It just felt like they don't fit their, so the millennials, of course, they have been growing up with parents who are a lot more supportive. The baby boomers were very wonderful parents, right? Very supportive, go do what you want. They had school teachers and school counselors who were also very supportive, right? Saying, let me know how we can help you to get into the right school, the right grades, whatever career you want, all these career counselors. So all of that is what they've been raised up with. And then they go into the workforce and they see a manager who's like, standing behind you, barking orders, telling you things to do, and it's a culture shock for them. And it's also a culture shock for the managers, because these young people don't have any manners. They are telling me to do how to do my job and stuff like that. So that kind of also makes us realize that management style has to change according to, because leadership practices rooted in the past will not lead you to the future.
Wow, that's a wonderful insight.
Yeah.
So what I got from what you're saying is they're more vocal.
Yep.
And if they don't feel that they can be heard and express themselves, they don't connect with their managers.
Exactly.
So the one thing that leaders they can do is to understand, how can I give them more opportunities to express, right, and to speak up. Right? That will increase the connection between the both of them. Right?
Exactly.
Very interesting.
And even managers who were very popular, they took it upon themselves. They took ownership of engaging with their team members. For them, it's not like employee engagement is the HR department's duty. It is my duty to engage my people. Whereas the other group is like, this is not part of my job scope. This is not my responsibility. This is HR. This is HR related stuff. It's not under me. And I think that's all the key small nuanced differences we see in terms of leadership. It's about stepping up to face the challenge, instead of just saying they're hard, they are this, they are that, and putting the blame on them. Take ownership and say, I want to know how to work with you guys better, and start from there. Yeah.
Very interesting. Many conversations that I've been having with leaders, I've been hearing that everywhere. It's like they're different. It's hard to manage them. And I see what you're saying is about, let's better understand how they think, how they behave, and help them, guide them, rather than they say, oh, they're different.
Exactly.
Very interesting. So now let's go deeper. Now let's understand, so now as a leader, what can I do? I know that in your book, you have 7 ways on how to engage millennials.
Yeah.
Can you briefly tell us what are the 7 ways?
Sure. So I call them the 7 hashtags, or the 7 fundamentals, right? I start off with fulfillment. So millennials, you have to understand that for them, money isn't everything. Meaningful money is something that they are looking for, right? Why I say that is because baby boomers will tolerate a toxic workplace just to get the money. Millennials won't. That's why we are seeing the great resignation happening today, because they are realizing there are better opportunities elsewhere. I don't need to suffer a toxic environment, and they want to do something that's more meaningful to them, right? So that's why all the side hustles come about. That's where all the entrepreneurial gig economy and all of these things are popping up, because they see that opportunity, it doesn't always have to be here. So fulfillment is first. Second is friendship, like we talked about, right? Are you more of a manager, or are you more of a friend and a mentor? Can I really open up about the issues I have with my girlfriend to you, right? Can I get you to be a listening ear when I have issues that's affecting my productivity? That's number 2. Number 3 is feedback. Can you give me quick feedback instead of waiting 1 year annual performance review? Can you tell me on the spot, this thing you did could have been better, even better if you had done this way, right? So the frequency of feedback is important. So how much time and how much value are you giving to the people that are under you, right? So you have to be a value-added leader. Another thing I talk about is forward framework. So millennials already want to know what their career is going to be like in the next few years with this organization. What do you have planned for me? Can I move upwards, sidewards, or diagonally, right? Can I move in different directions within this organization? Because they want to know what they can do. Sometimes they tend to get bored with the same job scope over and over again. They feel like, I've already learned whatever I need to learn here. I want to grow more. And a lot of people actually leave when they feel like the opportunities to grow and learn are limited within the organization, right? So that's a forward framework. Then we have futuristic. So how are we introducing technology to engage with people, right? And this is more of HR and a little bit more of management. Like, how can we use gamification to, let's say, give you appreciation? So giving you points for certain things that you've done really well, and using those points to actually claim some kind of gifts or stuff like that, right? So really appreciating the small things. I think that's what's missing, right? Appreciation is not really a culture that we have within our organization, right? So this is something. Another thing is to have a fun working environment. So when I say fun, what I mean is basically we are looking at old school organizations that have the typical benefits, which is like your insurance, your dental, right? And when you retire, maybe you get a golden watch and stuff like that, right? But now we're looking at organizations that have unlimited annual leave. They have matchmaking, right, for singles within the employees who are single, right? They have exercise, they have gyms, right? They have sleeping pods, right? Different kinds of ways to make the office culture engaging. And why do the big tech companies like Google, Facebook do this? Is because the longer you stay with the company, the longer time you enjoy working here, they know that it leads to more productivity and longer tenure of the employee, right? They stay longer than the typical number of years they would have stayed. So these are some of the concepts I go deeper into in the book, because I research startups, SMEs, MNCs, and see what are the key things that the organizations that are retaining millennials doing right in order to help them to recruit, reward, and retain the millennial generation better.
I really love those seven tips that you gave. There's so much to unpack there, but maybe I would like to focus on. So let's go into the number 3 that you said. Even in one of your previous podcasts, you mentioned that annual performance is outdated.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. So we believe that the younger generation tend to be a little bit more easily distracted, very focused on the next thing, and for them, the annual performance is not an accurate report of their performance, because they haven't been given feedback at that moment for them to have changed their behavior. So if you notice something that has not been good, don't wait until the specific date to officially mention it, right? They would rather have immediate hands-on approach of feedback that is given to them on the go, so that they can continuously improve. And that's what they are looking for, right? Even then, it is also about the approach. How do you also give them the feedback, right? How do you, and I think a lot of leaders struggle with this. How do I have difficult conversations with my people, especially when they get offended easily? So that is one of the things that leaders have to learn how to master. But having a frequent feedback is a lot more engaging for them compared to something that happens 1 year. The 1 year annual review was brought in by baby boomers, in fact. They are the ones who said, we need to get feedback. And then they said, okay, we'll give you feedback once a year. And now, as millennials have come in, they are requesting for more check-ins. And it doesn't have to be formal. They can be informal check-ins. Right? At the coffee shop, right? It doesn't have to be in the office. It doesn't have to be recorded. You don't have to write things down. But having that simple conversation, even writing a few words to explain, okay, what are 2 good words that you can use to describe my performance in the past month or the past 2 weeks, and 3 words that you can use to explain my performance. And then we exchange, because it's not just about me, it's also about you, right? We exchange those words, and then, okay, you've mentioned patient, you've mentioned hardworking, you've mentioned ownership. These are all the good things. Can you elaborate more on these words? So when you give them the keyword and then get them to elaborate, they will also feel like, this is interesting. This is a very quick way of exchanging feedback, and a quick way for me to get to understand the pulse of the people within my team as well.
So what you say is to shorten the cycles of feedback,
Yes.
right? To give more frequent feedback, but also what I really like is not to make it such a official
Formal.
or formal
Yeah.
thing, but just to give it as more as a habit.
Yes.
Keep giving it. I really like that.
Yes.
Wow, so good. Okay, let's go to another one that you mentioned also, which I find very interesting. It's about reverse and mentoring. So how can we implement that in the organizations?
So reverse mentoring, of course, is basically about helping us both understand that there are certain differences amongst generations. We first need to acknowledge that we cannot say like, oh, we're all humans. No, Americans and Japanese are different because of culture. Similarly, there has been a gap that has been widened thanks to technology, thanks to the social behaviors brought about by technology, thanks to the economy. So we have to first acknowledge that the generation gap has widened for the millennials, right? So we have to understand that the millennials have a different behavior. That acknowledgement and awareness has to come first. Then only will the management be willing to be mentored by someone who has just come in. And that mentoring is where I get to ask questions about how I can improve in some areas that the young people may be a lot more proficient in. Maybe, for example, looking at gamification, or maybe looking at some technology-based stuff that you think that you can learn from them. So the whole idea is to really match someone who is younger to someone who is a lot more senior, and to get them to exchange perspectives. The benefits of that is that I get to learn your model of the world. What's your mental model of the world? And you get to learn my mental model of the world. And we can exchange notes. We can learn to agree to disagree. We can learn to work better with one another. We can even ask each other questions about how do I deal with this situation I'm having with my boss. So it's not an immediate boss and subordinate kind of a mentorship. It is more people across the organization that is coming in. So you don't really know them. They may be from a different department. So what you want to do is you want to set up something like a speed dating kind of a thing. You have 30-second to 1-minute chats with different people. So all the older generation and the younger generation sit, and then they keep switching, and then they have those conversations, and then they vote for who they want to have as a mentor. And then, of course, there are some mentoring guidelines that you want to also look into to make sure that there are certain objectives put into place so that you know what you want to get out of this maybe 6-month mentoring sessions that you have with one another.
Wow, Vivek, I was even having goosebumps when you were talking about that. Because I like in this podcast, what I also like is that we question paradigms, and old ways of seeing things. And it is true that a lot of people see mentoring as in the past was like, okay, you have more experience, so you are the one that are going to mentor. But today it's different with so much information, so much knowledge in the company. You don't need to learn from the top. How can you build this reverse mentoring with everyone learns from everyone? I really love it.
Exactly. It's all about coming from a place where I don't have all the answers.
Yes.
I think a lot of leaders have the stress that I need to have all the answers, but this actually allows them to think that no, I don't have all the answers, and I am like a sponge. I'm willing to learn, and that's a trait that I think should be carried with you throughout your leadership, because the more you get fixated in this is the way to do things, the harder it is for you to change your mindset over let's experiment. And this is something we see lacking in a lot of organizations. The unwillingness to change and experiment and try different things is actually harming them in the long run. Yeah.
Wow. Like the capability to unlearn, to learn, it's very difficult.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. It's key to progress, right?
Exactly.
To succeed.
To let go of what has helped you so far,
so
that you can embrace what's coming.
Okay, so now let's say I'm a CEO or I'm a HR leader. Tell me, what can I do now? What can I implement in my company that even can be simple, but will help me to better manage the millennials?
I think the first thing we want to have is guided conversations. Conversations where it is not just to put them in the room and talk, but having guided conversations, almost like a talk show, right? Where you have someone as a facilitator, and then there are the two sides of the group, and then we explore certain questions together and get them to really exchange insights, and that will help one another to understand where you're coming from, your mental model, the examples, So a lot of the leaders are lacking that opportunity to have this kind of a conversation. Yeah. And having that conversation alone can bring people together a lot faster. It's very, very impactful.
So good. Yeah. So now, can you tell us, before you mentioned that you studied a lot of startups, a lot of companies, what they are doing well. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a success story of a company that is doing really well with the millennials?
Well, I think one initiative that I saw that was very interesting, and this is a very well-known company also as well, it's Alibaba. Alibaba actually has a matchmaking service, right? Because millennials they work themselves to the bone, right? And they are single, they have no time to date, and it is an issue, but it's a personal issue. But they recognize this is an issue that's affecting them, it's on their minds, right? And they're thinking about it, and in order to help them out, they said, let's come together, let's find out who are all the single people who want to, find a partner, right? And they found those profiles, put them up on a board, and then set them up for, dates and stuff like that. So it's not the company's duty to do all of this, but it's an extra added initiative. And what I've also realized is that for those dates that went well, that led to marriage, some of those marriages, even Jack Ma has even attended as a VIP guest of honor as well. So this is the kind of stuff that we want to see corporates doing. That means going above and beyond. How are you value adding to the employee? Because the more value added you are as a leader, as management, right, the more the net promoter score will increase as well, right? The more people will start saying this is a wonderful organization to be in. I've been to a lot of organizations where when I do ask this question, right, how likely are you to invite a friend of equal standing to join this organization, right, with the same amount of pay and stuff like that as you, right? And unfortunately, anonymously, because it's anonymous, they all say, I would never do that to my friend. Hell no. Because they don't feel like this is the best place, and they feel that there are better places that others could be. So then we have to ask ourselves, are we really engaging with the people, right? Are they really feeling like they're proactive there? Are they productive there? And are they promotive? Are they really promoting this company as an employee, right? So we want to move towards that direction where everyone feels like this is the best place to work at. And I think that's sorely lacking in a lot of organizations, sadly, till today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow, so good, Vivek. But we're coming to the end.
Oh, really? Time flies.
So now I want to ask you. So people ask you a lot of questions. So what is one question that no one asked you and you would love to answer?
The question that I wish people ask me, they haven't asked me, is how do you think millennials will behave once they become the people in the management level? Right, and it is interesting to see this because what we have seen from the people who have entered the workforce and they've caused a lot of stir in the media, they have gotten a lot of awareness. People talk about millennials so much. It's very interesting to see that how they will now perform as people in the management. I do believe that for them, we will definitely see a lot of speed in terms of decision making, right? So lesser red tape. Right, I guess it depends on the organization and how big the organization is as well. But what we want to see is, I think, what we might see is as they become management, things will become faster, things will move faster. We will see a lot more informal ways of making this organization, not really straight up, certain fixed and rigid kind of thing. It's more of flexible, right? We are already seeing that happening with the Gen X and baby boomer management. So as millennials go into management, I think that it'll become a lot more flexible. I do think that there'll be a lot more focus on meaning, right, and a lot more focus on how the work you do is also impacting people outside, right? The focus on the ikigai will also be there, I believe, when these people enter management. So I do hope and pray that we have organizations led by millennials in the management to be a lot more value added to the employee, right? So it's a value added management, value added leaders that we see. That's what I hope we will see as well.
Very good. But also with your help, I mean, with your work, you helping many people with that. Well, thank you so much. I think this is a topic. I know I've been talking with many leaders. They are struggling with this topic. Yeah. So I'm happy that you are working on it. And of course, I mean, good luck. You are writing you have a book. You are writing another book. When is your book is going to be released?
So Millennial Leaders is actually coming out in November 2022, right? And the one that I'm writing probably next year. Yeah, Marketing to Millennials will be next year.
Vivek, I learned a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving so many insights, and good luck when you're...
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me here, and it was a wonderful conversation we had together. I hope everyone got something out of today.
Indeed.
Yeah.